I am not anti-Power Automate. I am pro-Power Automate, plus the thing that handles the 20% it cannot. Power Automate is the right tool for the first 80% of almost any document, email, or ticket pipeline at a $50 to $1 billion company. It is cheap. It is in your Microsoft 365 license. The in-house team can build flows without writing real code. It interoperates with everything Microsoft. Most engineering-led mid-market IT teams I talk to have at least one Power Automate flow in production. Several have 20 or more flows. Then the flow hits a wall. The wall has 4 predictable shapes. Each shape is architectural, not a bug. Each shape requires something Power Automate is not designed to do. The missing thing bolts on top without ripping out the flow you have already built. Wall 1. Long-tail vendor format drift. The first flow handles the email pattern you tested it on. Customer sends a PDF invoice. Flow uses AI Builder or Form Recognizer to extract line items. Result lands in SharePoint. Clean. Works. Then the second vendor sends a multi-page scanned PDF where the Koniku copier flattened all line items into one column. Then the third vendor uses a German language template because their parent company is in Frankfurt. Then the fourth vendor puts the PO number in the footer in 6-point Arial. Each new format is its own configuration push to AI Builder or its own conditional branch in the flow. At 5 vendors, you can keep up. At 50, you cannot. The architectural problem is not that AI Builder is bad, it is actually decent for the cases it is trained on. The architectural problem is that Power Automate does not have a structured way to manage long-tail format coverage as a first-class concern. No drift detection, no signal that says, this looks like a new vendor format we have not trained on. No queue for the labeling team to triage the unknowns. No version control on the format library beyond, did you remember to export the AI Builder model? What you need on top of Power Automate at this wall is a vendor format management surface that tracks format coverage, surfaces drift, queues labeling work, and version controls the extraction logic. Power Automate stays as the orchestration layer. The format management layer bolts on. Wall 2. Per-tenant credential isolation. Most Power Automate flows in production use a service principal with delegated graph API permissions. Those permissions are almost always tenant-wide. That is the default, and the security review that would have scoped them more tightly did not happen during the initial build. You discover this is a problem one of 2 ways. Either the security team finds it in an annual review and pauses the flow until it is properly scoped. That is typically a quarter-long remediation project. Or a regulator asks why a single service principal has read access to every mailbox in the tenant when the flow is only supposed to read invoice emails. That is typically a 6-month remediation project plus an audit finding. The architectural problem is that Power Automate's auth model lives at the tenant level by default. Per-flow credential scoping is possible, but requires building the scoping logic outside Power Automate, typically as a wrapper Azure function that mints scoped tokens. Most teams have not built that because nobody told them they needed to. What you need at this wall is a per-pipeline credential vault that mints scoped tokens per execution, scoped to exactly the mailbox or folder or library or site the flow needs, with audit logging on every token issuance. Power Automate calls the vault for the token. The vault enforces scope. Wall 3. Observability and replay. Power Automate's run history is fine for debugging a single failed run last week. It is not the audit trail your general counsel, your insurance carrier, or your state regulator is going to ask for when an AI-mediated decision needs to be reviewed 2 years from now. The audit trail, required for AI-related compliance review, has a specific shape. Drafted by AI, reviewed by name, approved at timestamp, sent at timestamp, sent to recipient, prompt and model output preserved. Decision retained for the statutory window, usually 6 to 7 years, longer in HIPAA contexts. Power Automate's run logs do not have this shape. They have what Microsoft chose to log, retained for 28 days by default. You can configure up to 60 days on enterprise SKUs, longer with custom export to log analytics, but you have to build that export, and it does not include the prompt and output structuring. The architectural problem is that Power Automate logs are operational, not evidentiary. They are designed for the engineer debugging the flow, not the lawyer responding to a discovery request, or the carrier underwriting your renewal. What you need at this wall is a structured audit log that captures every AI decision in evidentiary format. Cloud events, version 1.0 is the typical pattern, retains it for the statutory window, and produces a monthly evidence pack you can hand to your carrier without 2 engineers spending an afternoon. Power Automate emits the events. The audit layer captures, structures, and retains. Wall 4. Multi-channel handoff. The flow handles email. Then someone in operations asks about SMS for the after-hours case. Then someone in sales asks about Teams. Then someone asks about WhatsApp because they have a customer cohort that will not use email. Then someone asks about Slack because the partner integration team uses it. Each channel has its own connector, its own auth model, its own rate limits, its own message format expectations. The Power Automate way to handle this is to build a separate flow per channel and try to keep the business logic in sync between them. This works for 2 channels. It does not work for 5. The architectural problem is that Power Automate does not have a native concept of a channel-agnostic intent that can be expressed once and dispatched to end channels. Each channel is its own flow with its own implementation of the same intent. The result is logic, drift across channels, and the inevitable production incident. The email flow does the right thing. The SMS flow does the wrong thing. Someone forgot to update both. What you need at this wall is a multi-channel orchestration layer that expresses the intent once, say, send confirmation to customer, handles channel selection based on which channel can actually reach the customer, and dispatches with consistent business logic across channels. Power Automate stays as the front-end intake. The orchestration layer handles the fan-out. The 4 failure modes above are the 4 reasons engineering-led mid-market IT teams move past pure Power Automate after the initial 80% lands. The wrong response is to rip out Power Automate and migrate to a different platform. You would lose the flows your team has already built. You would retrain everyone. You would probably hit the same 4 walls in 12 months with the new platform. The right response is to bolt the missing pieces on top. Power Automate stays as the orchestration layer for the intake because it is good at that. The format management, credential vault, audit trail, and multi-channel orchestration layers run alongside it, called by the Power Automate flows when they need the missing capability. Your in-house team keeps building flows. The bolt-on layer handles the operational 20%, when to act. The signal to act is when your team has hit 2 of the 4 walls and is starting to talk about rebuilding it properly in a different platform. The rebuild conversation is the moment to bolt on instead. The rebuild conversation is usually triggered by a specific incident, a vendor format outage, a security audit finding, a regulator inquiry, a multi-channel logic drift production bug. The incident makes the 4-wall pattern visible all at once. If you are past 2 walls and the rebuild conversation has not started yet, you have 6 to 12 months before it does. Better to bolt on now than rebuild later. What about Microsoft Agent 365, Copilot Studio, and AGT? The Microsoft Agent 365 marketing narrative says all four walls are addressed in the new Microsoft AI agent platform. The reality is more nuanced. Agent 365 is Substrate. It is a platform for building agentic AI applications, not an operations layer on top of existing Power Automate flows. If you are starting greenfield, Agent 365 is a reasonable architectural choice. If you have 20 Power Automate flows in production today, Agent 365 does not help with the operational 20% on those. It is a different platform with its own learning curve and its own four walls, which the early adopter case studies are starting to surface. Microsoft AGT, the open source agent governance toolkit, is also Substrate. Open source primitives for agent permission scoping and audit, same shape. Substrate, not ops layer. If your team installs AGT, your team operates AGT. The operations layer on top is still missing. The bolt-on approach treats Power Automate, Agent 365, AGT, and the rest as the substrate they are, and adds the operational layer that none of them ship. This is exactly the shape JieGou ships. We are not a Power Automate replacement. We are the layer that bolts on when your flows hit one of these four walls. If you want the full version of this argument, the essay is at jiegou.ai/essays/power-automate-endgame. It has more depth on each of the four walls, plus the bolt-on architecture pattern. If you have already hit two of the four walls and you want the bolt-on architecture diagram, send me a message on LinkedIn with the words Power Automate. I will reply with the diagram. Thanks for watching.